Welcome, Coach Agner's Math. Today we'll be talking about trapezoids. So we've talked about all types of parallelograms, rectangles, rhombi, and squares. But today we're going to talk about trapezoids, which is a different type of quadrilateral. So as we look at it, a non-isosceles trapezoid, which is just any old trapezoid. The important piece is we know only one pair of opposite sides is parallel versus a parallelogram where both sets are, and that consecutive angles are supplementary. We know this, okay? We know this because of the fact that consecutive angles share a transversal for parallel lines, so we can call those two angles supplementary to each other. Now, where this gets confusing is if I mark these two angles right here, I'd call those two angles a base pair. The base pair themselves are consecutive angles, but they are not supplementary. If I was going to talk about supplementary angles, I'd have to talk about two angles on the same transversal. So just make sure you don't get that confused. Looking down below, isosceles trapezoids. Now, the only difference is isosceles tells us that I have two congruent legs. Two legs are marked congruent. So now we know a couple different things. We know that non-parallel sides, the legs are congruent. We know that the diagonals, the dotted lines through the middle, are congruent. The base angles are congruent, which we just talked about a minute ago. I can go ahead and mark these again. Now I can mark them as congruent instead of marking them two different ways because we know base angles are congruent and opposite angles are supplementary. Okay? All of these apply, which is why I didn't have to say that consecutive angles were supplementary. What I know is that opposite angles would be supplementary as consecutive angles are supplementary and base pairs are congruent. So that's all the information we need to know about trapezoids. Let's go ahead and apply some of it. As I'm looking down below, problem number 1, we know that consecutive angles are supplementary. So 180 minus 87 leaves me with 93. 180 minus 51 would leave me with 129. So the measure of angle K would be 129 degrees. The measure of angle M would be 93 degrees. Looking on at number 2. Okay. Again, consecutive angles, not base angles. These would be base angles, but consecutive angles would be supplementary. So 180 minus 62 would give me 118, and 180 minus 31 would give me 149. So the measure of angle C would be 149 degrees. The measure of angle D would be 118 degrees. Looking on at example number 3. Notice where my parallel lines are at now. They've turned the shape on you. Okay? So I know that consecutive angles, again, base angles stay on the same parallel line. Consecutive angles are on the same transversal. Consecutive angles are supplementary, so I would say 8x plus 54 plus 6 is 60 equals 180. So 8x would be 120, or x would be 15. That would be your answer. Looking on number 4. Find the measure of angle R. Again, these would be consecutive angles, share a transversal. Consecutive angles are supplementary, so I'll combine my like terms. 12x and 7x is 19x. 3 and negative 13 would be negative 10, so I'm going to say plus negative 10, since I went ahead and put a plus sign there, equals 180. So plus negative 10, add 10 to both sides, 19x would equal 190, x equals 10. Now, they weren't asking for x, so make sure that you go plug it in. Take that 10, come back up, say 7 times 10 minus 13. So 70 minus 13 would be 57, would equal the measure of angle R. All right, looking on, number 5. Now we're talking about an isosceles trapezoid. Okay? Talking about an isosceles trapezoid, we're going to say segment DG. Segment DG would be congruent to segment EF. Segment DF would be congruent to segment EG. Go ahead and do number 7 while we're here. Looking down at number 7, we know that base angles are congruent, so that would be 112. We know that consecutive angles are supplementary, so 180 minus 112 would give me 68. We know that base angles are congruent, so I can go ahead and put it both places. The measure of angle Q is 112 degrees. The measure of angle R is 68 degrees. The measure of angle S is 68 degrees. And we should be good to go. Looking on number 6. We know that the measure, or angle T, is congruent. Angle T would be congruent to angle U. And angle V would be congruent to angle W. Let's see if I can get my paper to write. Okay. Looking down at number 8. All they've done, flipped the shape upside down from what we've been looking at. But we know base angle pairs are congruent. And we know that consecutive angles, which are the ones that run along my transversal, are supplements. So that would be 133. And that would be 133. So the measure of angle W is 47 degrees. The measure of angle Y would be 133 degrees. And the measure of angle Z would also be 133 degrees. Flipping over on the back. Zoom out just a little bit. Looking at problem number 9. If MNOP is an isosceles trapezoid, MP is 16x minus 13, and NO is 9x plus 8. Okay. And then I can say PN is 5y plus 19, and MO is 12y minus 37. Our job is to solve for x and to solve for y. What I want you guys to see, it's an isosceles trapezoid, so the first things first, PM or MP equals PN, or sorry, not PN, but NO. So 16x minus 13 equals 9x plus 8. So 7x would equal 21, or x would be 3. Can say the same thing. We know that diagonals are also congruent. So I can say that PN equals MO, or 5y plus 19 equals 12y minus 37. Okay, do my math, say 7y equals 56. So y would equal 8. My suggestion this time, go ahead, pause the video, see if you can knock out the rest of these on your own. Welcome back. Look at number 10. We know that base angles have to be congruent, so I'm going to go ahead and start by solving for x. 2x plus 27 equals 5x minus 12, so 3x would equal 39, or x would be 13. Go ahead and plug that back in. 2 times 13 would be 26. 26 plus 27 would be 53. So that tells me both of those angles are 53 degrees. Consecutive angles would be supplements. So 180 minus 53 would give me 127 degrees for my base angles of A and B. Measure of angle A, 127 degrees. Measure of angle B is 127 degrees. Measure of angle C and D would both be 53 degrees. Looking down at number 11. I no longer have base angle. Look at number 12. Let's look at number 11. Try that again. Right now I have consecutive angles, right? They're on different parallel lines. They share transversal. We used to call these same side interior when we were talking about the parallel line conjecture. Know that they are supplements. So combining my like terms, I'd say 14x minus 16 equals 180. So 14x equals 196, or x equals 14. Go plug that back in. 140 minus 33 would give me 107. 180 minus 107 would tell me that this is 73. And then I know that base angles are congruent to each other. So looking at my angles, the measure of angle J would be 107, measure of angle K would be 107 degrees, and then L and M would be 73 degrees each. Looking on to number 12. Looking at number 12, we got an isosceles trapezoid, opposite angles. Okay, of an isosceles trapezoid are also supplementary, so adding my like terms, 16x plus 4 would equal 180. So 16x would equal 176. So x would be 11. Go plug that back in. 66 minus 1 would be 65. So the bottom two angles, y and z, would be 65 degrees. 180 minus 65 degrees would tell me that each of my top angles would be 115 degrees in order to make those supplemental angles. Number 13, if an isosceles trapezoid, if it is an isosceles trapezoid, find the missing angles. Base angles are congruent, so 21x minus 16 equals 18x plus 5. Go ahead and do my math, say 3x equals 21, or x equals 7. Find the missing angles, take that 7, plug it back in. 7 times 21 would be 147. 147 minus 16. Go ahead and write that down to make sure I don't have a silly error. It's a minus, so 147 minus 17 would be 131. 131 minus 180, 180 minus 131 would be 49 degrees. So go ahead and mark all your base angles. And I can say the measure of angle C is 131 degrees, measure of angle D is 131 degrees, measure of angle E and the measure of angle F would both be 49 degrees. Last one, looking at number 14. If STUV is an isosceles trapezoid, find the missing angle. So again, got opposite angles. Opposite angles are supplementary. So we'll say that 17x minus 24 equals 180, or 17x equals 204. Doing a little math right now. 204 divided by 17 would be 12. So x would be 12. Go ahead and take that, plug it back in. 3 times 12 is 36, plus 1 is 37. So I know S and T are 37 degrees. 180 minus 37 is 143. And I know that base angles are congruent, so U and V are both 143 degrees. This has been Coach Eichner's Math. I appreciate you watching and I hope you have a great rest of your day.